The Setup menu on the Canon Rebel T4i/650D helps you set up how the camera operates, like the date and time, and it's where you go to format your memory card or update the firmware. There are lots of menu items here, so let's dive right in. The Setup menu is broken into 4 sections and gets highlighted in yellow. The first option in Setup 1 is Select Folder. Here you can select a folder for your images to be filed in. You can select one that is already on the list by highlighting it and pressing Set. Or you can create a new folder by highlighting Create Folder and pressing Set. You will then confirm the creation of a new folder. File numbering determines how your images are numbered. Do you want them to be numbered continuously, no matter if you replace the memory card or create a new folder? One note here is that if you use a card that already has images on it, your numbering may not start from the last image you took. It may instead start from the last image on your memory card. Choosing Auto Reset will have your files start from 0001 every time a card is replaced or a new folder is created. Again though, if you insert a card that already has images on it, you may end up not starting at 0001 and instead start with the last number on the card. And last, you can choose Manual Reset, where you can then start your file numbering at 0001 in a new folder on the memory card. Auto Rotate is next. If you choose On, images taken in the vertical orientation will be shown vertically in playback and on your computer. Format Card is where you format your memory card. This erases all information on the card when you highlight OK and press the Set button. In Setup 2, we have Auto Power Off. Here you set the amount of time before the camera will turn off when sitting idle. You have a bunch of time options here, plus Disable, where it will not turn off. Be careful using Disable though, because it will eat your battery power if your camera is sitting idle. Next is LCD Brightness. Pressing Set will take you to a slider where you can then choose the brightness of the LCD screen by pressing the right and left cross keys. Then you press Set. LCD Auto Off is where you can have the shooting setting display automatically turn off when your eye gets close to the viewfinder by choosing Enable. Time Zone is next. Here you can set your time zone from a list of cities. Next is Date Time. You set the date and time plus the date format, plus if you want daylight savings time to be calculated. Next, you can choose your language from a list. Last in this section is Video System for connecting your camera to a non-HD TV with a cable. You can choose NTSC or PAL. In Setup 3, we start with Screen Color. There are 5 choices in the shooting settings screen. You press Set when you found the one you like for your situation. Next, you can enable the Feature Guide. When enabled, a simple description of each item is displayed when you change the shooting mode or use the Quick Control screen. Touch control on the LCD screen can be disabled here. Sensor Cleaning is the next option. You can enable or disable auto cleaning at startup and shutdown. You can clean the sensor now, or you can clean the sensor manually. This is not available in the basic zone modes, but it allows you to clean the sensor in the camera manually with a blower or other device when the lens is detached. Use extreme caution if you do decide to do this. Next is GPS device settings. These settings are only available when the optional GPS receiver is attached to the camera. On to the last section, Setup 4. This section isn't available in your basic zone modes. The first option here is Certification Logo Display. It simply shows you some of the camera's certifications. Next is Custom Functions. There is a lot here where you can customize how your camera works. This first screen is Exposure Level Increments. Pressing Set, you can move down the list to choose whether you want to control exposure in 1/3 stop increments or 1/2 stop increments. Then press Set to choose. Then you can press the right arrow to move to the next item, ISO Expansion. You can press Set and choose Off or On, where you will have H available as an ISO option, which is equivalent to ISO 25600 for still photos and ISO 12800 for movies. Again pressing Set and then the right cross key, I get to highlight tone priority. Pressing Set, I can choose to enable this option, which improves detail in the highlights of your image. Pressing Set and the right cross key, I am now at Autofocus Assist Beam Firing. Pressing Set, I can choose how the Autofocus Assist beam behaves. I can have it enabled, disabled, enabled only when an external flash is used, or only have it used when an external speedlight is used that has an infrared autofocus assist beam. Now making my selection and pressing Set, I am at Mirror Lockup. Enabling Mirror Lockup prevents the mirror from flapping, which prevents possible camera shake when a photo is taken. This can be important when shooting super telephoto or macro. Pressing Set and the right cross key again, I see Shutter/Auto Exposure Lock button. Here you can change when the camera locks autofocus and auto exposure. You can have the shutter release button lock focus and exposure when half pressed. or have the half press lock the auto exposure and the star button lock focus. Or you can have the star button stop autofocus when in AI servo autofocus, and then the focus and exposure are set when the photo is taken. Or last, you can have the star button start or stop the AI servo autofocus operation when pressed, then the focus and exposure are set when the photo is taken. Pressing set on the item of your choosing and the right cross key, you see a sign set button. As you could probably guess, this determines how the set button behaves. You can have it behave normally, or when pressed, have it display the image quality settings on the LCD screen, or have it display the flash exposure compensation, or it can behave as the info button does, or it can behave as the menu button does, or lastly, it can bring the ISO sensitivity settings up on the LCD screen. Making your choice by pressing that set button, then pressing the right cross key, we get to the last option, LCD display when power on. There are only two options here. You can choose display on, where when the camera is powered on, the shooting settings will be displayed. Or you can choose previous display status. Here, if you press the info screen to turn off your shooting settings prior to turning the camera off, the settings will not appear when you turn the camera back on. Now the next item down is copyright information. This is where you can input copyright information, which will be added to the EXIF information on the image file. Pressing set, I get to enter author's name and entered copyright details. In both of these, you input your information, then you can display the information or delete the information. Next is clear settings. Here you can reset camera settings back to their defaults, either all camera settings or just the custom functions. The very last item on the setup menu is firmware version. Pressing set here will take you to the firmware information. This is also where you update your firmware. That was a big one, but there's a lot of information in the setup menu. So now we've been through the shooting menu, the playback menu, and the setup menu, but we still need to go through the My menu. Check back for it soon.